All right. Good evening, everybody, from Massimo Banzi and
Benedetta. I know. I see. I can't. Oh my God.
Yeah, I do this because I don't know where I should point. You would have thought that after all these shows I learned where to point, but I don't. It's okay. So welcome back, Benedetta. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm better. Chemistry is helping me look normal while my back is still hurting like hell. But but we're back. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm sorry I missed the episode last week.
We missed you.
Yeah, I really like the work that Julia does, but unfortunately, I was really in pain. But here we are. And but are you done with the students?
Yeah, my semester is officially over. Classes are done. My students are graduating tomorrow. So they did pieces. Yep. So now it's time for research and grant writing, and a few accelerator programs that I'm a part of this summer for this project that I think I told you about, which is called Solar Seed, which is it's a new kind of charge controller for renewable energy systems, and so we're going to be piloting that soon.
So is the graduation happening online?
Yep, there's a virtual commencement tomorrow, and we have
streaming or?
I actually don't really know the details. They've kept it very mum. So tomorrow we'll get a link and we'll find out what it's actually going to happen.
Hopefully Scott is not in the chat listening to this.
Yeah, I don't know. But we did a virtual show, so that was actually like our official send off. And we all said goodbye to our students for the semester. So it was really cute.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. So tonight, actually, as they say, at Saturday Night Live, we have a great show for you tonight, but it's actually true because we have three great guests.
Yeah.
And so the first guest, also in the US, they say the first guest need no introduction, but I don't know. I will let you introduce the first guest because you know her quite well.
Yep, very lucky to call her my colleague. So yes, our first guest is Dr. Elizabeth Hénaff, and she's a computational biologist, but she also has a really interesting art practice, and her career spans, like her academic as well as her background, span a lot of different fields, from computer science to plant biology, ending with a PhD in bioinformatics. And she does like really interesting research and projects around the ever-changing microbiome. And so she'll talk to us a little bit about that. She's my colleague at NYU. She's an assistant professor at the Tandon School of Engineering, where she teaches classes like biodesign. And so in honor
of something to talk about.
Yeah. So, in honor of the two of us who are calling in from New York, the discount code is New York.
Good job.
Yeah.
Is it this one? No, not this one. I suck at this. I don't know which button to press. This one. Okay, cool. This is the discount code, New York, with a dash in between. So if you go to the online store and you use this code, you'll get a discount. And then later on, we'll explain to you how this discount works. Yeah, there's a text. Our producer is hyper efficient. And so just quickly about the other guest that you will see, there's Maurizio Branca, who comes from Arduino. He's going to talk about some interesting work he's done interfacing. He's built this very complex web application to manage parking lots that uses the Arduino Cloud. So it's going to show you how to use the API to integrate all these IoT devices into your web application. And then we have John Nussey, who is a designer from London that I've known for quite a while, who also wrote books about Arduino, build products. He was involved in this company that we had back in the days in London called Tinker.it, where it was before there was an Arduino company. Tinker was kind of the Arduino company. So we'll chat about a number of the things he does now at the end. And so let's bring in the first guest.
Hi.
Good evening. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I really like the work that you do. The project that you do is very interesting. So I'm super happy that you accepted to be on the show.
Yeah, glad to. I think last time we all hung out, it was maybe last summer at an outdoor bar in Brooklyn, right?
Oh yeah.
Probably around this time.
Probably around this time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. When people could still hang out in bars in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And now we can hang out at this bar.
Yeah. Not too early in the afternoon to have a beer, I think.
Yes, sorry, you are in New York. While over here, it's fine to have a beer.
But our semesters are over, so we should, I think we're allowed.
Yeah, you're no longer on duty, so you can drink. Good. So let's talk about a little bit. So Benedetta, let's have a I'll let you do the honors of talking to Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I think I don't want to give too much away since I think I gave a pretty good bio summary. But yeah, if I know you have some awesome slides for us and projects to look at.
Yeah. So when you are ready, we will bring the slides to the screen.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad to share. Yeah, I guess just let's see, share screen. Tab, we tested this earlier, up.
Ta-da.
All right.
Boom, perfect.
Cool. Cool. So yeah, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm assistant professor at the Tandon School of Engineering in New York City. And my background is as a biologist. So I'm a biologist who uses computational methods to study the living systems that I'm interested in. And as biologists, especially when we study things that we can't see with our naked eye, most of the methods that we use and the understanding that we have is mediated by instruments, and it's really through the need for instrumentation that I was introduced to Arduinos and physical computing in general. And so here I just have a few images of some of the instruments that I've used. Can you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So this image here is of some seedlings that I genetically engineered to emit light, bioluminescence, under particular growth conditions. So here I was studying how plants respond to the force of gravity. So, roots always grow down, shoots always grow up. Plants can perceive gravity to know how to do that. And so the instrument that I was using for these studies was a super cooled CCD camera and a microscope. So these seedlings were very, very small, and the light that they emitted was very, very low. So that instrument took up a whole room, and I spent many hours late at night in front of that microscope. I've also used a lot of molecular biology techniques and DNA sequencing to understand things about the organisms that I study. So that's also a form of instrumentation. You need to extract DNA from a living organism and then sequence it and generate digital data to be able to understand something about that organism's identity, growth, development, response to the environment. And so really as a biologist, you relate to the things that you study through instrumentation. And so I wanted to just talk about a couple of projects that I'm really excited about right now, and how Arduino in particular and DIY instrumentation in general has really transformed the way that I practice as a scientist, and also the way that I relate to the things that I study. So in general, I'm interested in environmental microbiomes, so populations of microorganisms that inhabit a particular place. And I'm interested in particular in urban environments and how the design decisions that we make for our urban environments will sculpt the populations of microorganisms that we interact with. And so one project that I've been working on for several years now is studying the microorganisms that live in the Gowanus Canal. The Gowanus Canal is a Superfund site, so the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency designates certain sites as priority for remediation. So these are sites that have been contaminated with industrial waste over the years and become toxic wastelands. And so the way we study these is by taking samples. So you can see here in our super scientific DIY sampling methods that consist of these like PVC pipes that we like dig into the sludge to be able to take samples of the sludge. Anytime that you're wearing a hazmat suit, it feels like you're doing real science. So we take samples from the sludge and try to study the microorganisms that are able to survive in this toxic wasteland. So we've identified that these microorganisms that can live in this toxic sludge can do that because they're able to degrade the toxic compounds that they're being challenged with. And so we did a whole project using DNA sequencing to identify those genetic pathways that enable them to do that. This is an open source citizen science project, and you can find the results of all that data analysis on the website, bkbioreactor.com. But where I got introduced to the idea of using Arduinos and DIY sensors was when we wanted to start growing these bacteria in the lab. And so to grow microorganisms in a lab, you need to provide them a controlled environment and also measure things about their growth. And so you do that inside of a bioreactor, which is a container with controlled inputs and outputs, and that you can measure things about it. So you could buy a bioreactor from a biotech company for about $20,000, or you can make a bioreactor with a mason jar, an Arduino, some sensors. So these are sensors from Atlas Scientific that makes shields for our Arduino and has a whole set of environmental sensors. And then I custom made this little lid that fit just right for the sensors in the mason jar. And so you can make a bioreactor, granted with not all the full functions of what a commercially available reactor would be able to do, but it was sufficient for our purposes. And so this is the context in which I was first introduced to Arduino, and it really transformed the way that I thought about the practice of biological research in general, to feel like you have the possibility of making your own instruments that do exactly the thing that you want them to do. So this was actually also part of an artist residency that I did at the School for Visual Arts in New York City. And so part of the result of that residency was developing this DIY piece of scientific instrumentation, but also having an art show at the end of the residency. And so so in this exhibit, I displayed one of these bioreactors that I had made with sludge that I had harvested from the Gowanus Canal. I was measuring things like pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and redox potential. So dissolved oxygen and redox potential are metrics that are kind of proxies for metabolic activity of microorganisms. And then I made this whole kind of physical installation with these LED strips that were driven by the measurements that were taken through by the sensors through the Arduino, and it had this kind of physical display and interactive display of the data that I was gathering. So this is just one example of, or this is the example of the first kind of introduction that I had to Arduinos and physical computing. And then since then, that's become a really integral part of my practice as a scientist. And so another project that I'm really excited about right now, which is going on at NYU and IDM, is developing sensors for street level flooding. And so there's different types of flooding that are a result of, our changing climate crisis, and in urban environments in particular, street level flooding can be a threat to human health because this floodwater often contains raw sewage from sewer systems that are being overwhelmed. And so this is a project in which we're developing distributed sensors, low-cost DIY sensors, to be able to measure the level of water on sidewalks. And so that first experience was kind of transformative, and now I incorporate physical computing in a lot of aspects of my research. And with that, feel free to get in touch at NYU and see other projects that are posted online.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice work.
Yeah, those are amazing.
I can talk for a long while too, but I figured we could just start the conversation with this one. Should I start?
Yeah, this is good. We wanted to keep this on the. I'll maybe remove this from the screen for a second so that you can be, your people can see your face better. But leave it shared because we can bring it back at the end so that people can get in touch. So wow, that's very interesting. Is the Gowanus Canal is very polluted, right? It was like a very polluted. Do you know what kind of pollution is in there? Just to understand the kind of.
Yeah, the main source of contamination is complex hydrocarbons. So byproducts of the petrochemical industry, specifically coal tar extraction.
Oh, wow.
So when you sample the stuff, it's like black and goopy and sticky, and it smells like gasoline.
Wow, that's crazy. But it's interesting. So do you see like a number of people building their own devices to replace more expensive scientific equipment? Is it something that you see quite often?
It's something that I'm seeing more and more, actually. A few years ago, I participated in this course called How to Grow Almost Anything that was hosted at MIT. And there was a lot of folks there who were talking about developing their own instrumentation for research. There's also a huge movement of biohackers or community bio labs. So oftentimes people in maker spaces who are interested in biological research or biofabrication and who make a lot of their home lab setups. And obviously it's a lot cheaper to do so if you make your instrumentation yourself. So that could be from making bioreactors or, your own like temperature controlled environments, laminar flow hoods, things like that. And
a lot of your work has to, like, you also are kind of the vehicle to give them access to instruments to communities that you work and partner with, right? Like, are there community partners involved in some of the projects that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Gowanus Canal project, we're working with the Gowanus Canal Conservancy, which is a community advocacy group, and also another group called Gowanus by Design. They both work on a bunch of projects, but kind of the main concern is advocacy around the rezoning of the neighborhood. So that neighborhood used to be zoned as a light manufacturing neighborhood and is being rezoned as residential. And so with that kind of gentrification process, there's a lot of environmental issues that come up, and being able to and sensing, being able to have metrics of that environment is really valuable for these community organizations to then be able to have data to show policymakers why they're advocating for particular changes.
A lot of the work that you showed also is this idea of like visualizing these invisible, invisible layer of world that might come with like misconceptions and particular perceptions. What is your challenge with that, or how have you navigated?
Yeah, I mean that's a question that I still haven't entirely figured out yet, but that I'm in the process of thinking about. I mean, I think our relationship with microorganisms is often a contentious one. So microorganisms were discovered in the context of human disease, and a lot of our relationship has been about eliminating microorganisms that cause disease. So development of antibiotics, sterile technique and things like that, which has worked very well in some aspects. So, we don't die of a lot of the diseases, microbial diseases that we used to be challenged with. But we're also figuring out that microorganisms have a lot of important health benefits to human growth and development. So we can talk about the gut microbiome, we can talk about the skin microbiome, and how those are important for human health. And so, but I think that that's a more difficult relationship to talk about. And also, since these organisms are invisible, the only relationship that we have is mediated through instruments. And so the design of those instruments really dictates the nature of that relationship. So if the only thing that you have to measure a microbe is a clinical looking swab, you're going to have like a clinical kind of relationship with it because the swab looks like a thing that you would find in a hospital because it is. And so I think that that's where art practice is a really interesting way to investigate and to like discuss those kinds of relationships in a different framework than the scientific framework. And I think that those two things really go like hand in hand because, science and science research is dictated by the cultural paradigms that we have at the time. And so using art practice to address cultural paradigms is also a way to like contextualize scientific research and kind of like, bring it out of the silo of academia and into conversation on I guess on a more real life level. Yeah.
There's a question from the audience about the canal. Would those organisms be able to clean that canal of the coal tar byproducts?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is yes, but very slowly. And so when so the microbiome of the Gowanus Canal, as it is remediating the Gowanus Canal. So they've developed all sorts of metabolic functions to degrade the different toxic compounds that they're challenged with. But this operates at a time scale that's much slower than the human time scale, especially much slower than, the impatient real estate developer who wants to sell waterfront property time scale. But it is an interesting starting point for a biotechnological solution to remediation. The current strategy for this kind of contamination is to, dredge all the toxic sludge that you can, pour a cap of concrete on top of it, put the water back, and like call it okay, which it usually is on the like short to medium term. But then the concrete tends to crack and then things start to leak out again. And what's interesting to note is that the microbiome as it is now has had like 150 years to evolve and adapt. And as such is like a highly sophisticated bioremediation solution for that particular location. And it's also something that we would not be able to design or engineer in the lab. Even though we can engineer a microorganism to do a thing or to do multiple things, like engineering a complex population of many different microbial species that as a whole can encode this whole set of bioremediation functions to tackle this particular cocktail, that's something that we could not engineer in the lab.
Fascinating.
So yeah, no, I think it's actually quite interesting because I think one of the next things to for the maker community, for example, I think it's biohacking. Now that kind of we explored a lot of the electronics and fabrication, I'm really fascinated by the possibilities of this. But I realized that I don't know, and I was going to ask you if you know of anything that's kind of like a kit that will introduce people to biohacking. It's like an Arduino for biohacking doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And there's a lot of folks who are doing really good work in that field. And so I can, maybe talk to my own personal experience, but there's others who could talk to that even more expertly. I think there is not a biohacker kit. And I think that maybe for the same reason that we don't necessarily have a end-all be-all physical computing kit, is that it really depends on the kind of projects that you would be working on. But I do think that that we're at an interesting point in the field of biological research that is maybe similar to where computing was at 30 years ago or something, is that biology research and biofabrication has been a very kind of elitist discipline, in that you need to have had an undergraduate degree from a university and be enrolled in a graduate student to even step into a lab and start touching a pipette. And I think that now with all of the community bio efforts, that there's a certain democratization of the practice of biological sciences. And one of the things that enables that is being able to make your own instruments. So that really reduces the price point at which you can actually start doing experiments. So there's people who have made, say, kits for making a PCR machine. So polymerase chain reaction, which is one of the kind of basic tenets of molecular biology. So while there isn't a kit, I think that the fact of being able to make your own instruments is what enables that in the first place.
Cool, actually. So this is interesting, Benny, Elizabeth. I think this is something that you should you should look into, because there are also some questions from the audience about what are projects, ideas that we can use to introduce this to K-12 students in order to introduce them to biohacking. So that's probably the situation is now at the point where the world is kind of ready for understanding, to bringing this to a larger audience.
Yeah, I would point you to maybe a couple of communities that exist. So there's the Global Community Bio Summit that happens in Boston once a year that brings together a bunch of people. There's also a platform that has been created recently and has been really active also in the COVID response. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about COVID. Anyways.
You can. It's okay.
Called Just One Giant Lab, so JOGL, that has been founded by Thomas Landrin in Paris. And then there's also a yearly conference that happens on the west coast of the US called Biohack the Planet, which brings together a lot of community bio practitioners also. So those are kind of three places where people can start finding communities of people who are interested in that.
Cool. So we would go on talking for a long time, but unfortunately, we want to give room to the other guests. So please stay with us. There are other questions coming, so we will kind of bring them back at the end. So we'll for now we thank you, and this was great. I love the work that you do, and so I'm glad that we were able to have you on the show. So let's remember everybody, if you want to buy an Arduino, the discount code is New York. Although maybe the discount code could have been France, because you're originally from France, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. But so thank you for now. We'll send you back to the green room for a few minutes, and then we'll bring you back at the end for the end of the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now, wow, that was cool.
I know, I'm super lucky. I work with really amazing people.
Well, yeah, you do actually. It's great.
And you do too, so.
Well, right now I'm kind of, abandoned in Switzerland. Everybody else is at home, but no, I'm joking. Okay, so the next guest is person who works for Arduino, and we're gonna bring him into the streaming now. Welcome, Maurizio.
Hello, hi. Thank you. It's difficult to come after Elizabeth. She's so interesting. Make feel my daily work so boring, so useless. Yeah.
Well, we're going to use your stuff in our class, so that is so true.
But for so much interesting. So I don't know what can I do tomorrow morning when I woke up. So I don't know. Maybe you should
also
change career.
In things is that the way Elizabeth talks about her work makes it sound effortless. She's very humble in the way that she talks about things. No? So the complexity of what she does, she's kind of like, yeah, I did this, you know. So it's an interesting. Amazing. But don't worry, you do a lot of important work too. So we try to bring a mix of guests so that each one of you in your own right are interesting people. So considering that you are an interesting person, start talking about yourself. Tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Okay, maybe I can help with some...
Share, and I will bring the video to the screen.
Okay.
Where is it? Boom! There you are.
Yeah, here I am. So I'm quite new in Arduino. I work for Arduino since last August. But I'm a long time backend developer because I work as a programmer since almost 20 years now. As anyone who's working in this industry, I know very well Arduino, but I never thought that one day I could be working with them. So because I always used some backend stuff, so I work in the last years. I spent much time working on cloud stuff. Mostly, I have to share my unconditional love for AWS and serverless. And for fun, I write bots that scrape the web. Usually, I have two kids. Their school website really sucks, so I need to find a way to not using it and get the information I need. And since I work here, of course, I started to use Arduino. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the workshop from Ubi. I hope he will do another one in the future. So this is it. This is what I do usually. But I'd like to share with you one interesting project I worked with when I started last year. I was just a few days in, and my boss told me, "Oh, that's some interesting project, and we need to do it. Oh, you have all of the time in the world. Just complete it by the next 3 weeks." So it's a really interesting project. So I started this new project. This is involve parking lots. I don't know. You can think, okay, parking lots are not the most sexy thing in the world, but you can do a lot of sort of stuff. So think about what parking lot is a place where you park your car, but there are some stuff underneath. So usually our partner, we're working with our partner. Bosch is our partner in this project. Bosch built some tiny little sensor. This is a small sensor that Bosch built. You place it on the floor, and this device can tell if a car is parked on this spot. So it can detect if a car is available. So this can open a lot of use cases, because maybe you can want to know where are the last spot available, or maybe if you are a law enforcer, you want to know when someone parked here, so you can go there and check if he paid the bill. So this is the context of the project. So next time, when you place this tiny little box on the floor. You need to collect the data. And how you collect the data from, you can imagine a shopping mall with a huge area of parking spot. So you need something to transmit the data over the air. So you will probably don't use such an antenna, but you will probably use something like LoRa. LoRa is a wireless standard. It's for long range. This is maybe it's not one of the mainstream technologies such as Wi-Fi and other, but it's very, very used. It's widely used when you need to transmit information over long distance. And by long distance, I mean tens of kilometers. So if you need to do something, LoRa is a good fit. Usually, last autumn, I was in Rome and I attended the Maker Faire in Rome. There are a lot of people that come to our booth and says, "Okay, I will live in a rural area. I need to monitor some trees. How can I do?" And this is a really good fit because usually LoRa devices are very low power. They can transmit to long distance. So you have your parking spot. You have your sensor that can tell you if the car is parked or not, and you can transmit the data where this data goes by. So another piece of this project is you have a lot of data, a lot of sensor on the way, but you need a small piece. You need a gateway. This is part of the LoRa architecture. The sensor transmits the data, and the LoRa gateway collect the data over a long distance, as we said. So the LoRa gateway is connected to the internet. So the gateway needs to be connected to the internet, and then can start transmit the data to I've designed a couple of boxes here. This is a part of the LoRa standard, the LoRa architecture. There are one application server, network server. It's a complex thing. It's part of the network. This is, we don't need to go deeper. But if we zoom out a little bit, you can see this is what we have built working with Bosch. All this on the right, this is out of the LoRa world. This is handled by usually some partner or some company that handle all the LoRa, the heavy duty of the LoRa stuff. And then here we come. So Arduino is well known for the boards and all the ecosystems in the maker, but since a couple of years ago, we are built an IoT cloud. The cloud is a system that use the same philosophy we are using for our device. So it tries to make it simple to anyone to jump in and start using IoT with the same philosophy that that has been used to build the board. So in this project, we use our IoT API to build a complete solution. This is our first attempt because before, usually I worked before in the IoT industry, and usually building a complete solution, it requires a lot of work because you need to write the firmware for the device, provision the credential, and put it together. If you're using our IoT cloud, you have all the heavy duty already done, and you have a nice API. So we have tried to be our own clients, our own user. We try to be
eat your own dog food. That's the typical phrase.
Yeah. Luca told me, why don't we try to use our public API to build a complete solution that can work, that can do something that anyone in the world could do using the same public APIs. So we do that. So we have built a complete application that is made of two components: the front end that handle the pages and so on, and the back end that handle the communication with the API. But this application doesn't have any special treatment. So it doesn't have privilege. It's using the public IoT API to do its work. So this is the scope of the Bosch project, but you can do the same without any LoRa devices. This is nothing specific with LoRa. You can replace all the LoRa stack if you don't need something like LoRa, and use something like Maker Wi-Fi or Maker Nano, so something that can connect to the internet and communicate with our platform. So you can see here this application. Maybe I can try. Let's try. Yeah, let's try to a live demo. What
I think, just as a comment, I really like this project that you did, because in a way it kind of shows the fact that if you're trying to build an IoT solution, you can just delegate to the Arduino Cloud all the kind of complicated stuff of dealing with devices and everything else, and then you have a clean API. So somebody who is like a classic backend developer can just talk to the API and they can do IoT solutions. Oh, let me bring the screen back in here. Boom, there you go.
Okay, this is our application. This is the application works like that. It's still a prototype. It's not in production, but it's a lot of features. So the first thing, when you log into the application with your Arduino account, you can see what the application calls places. Usually places are a big parking lot in a shopping mall or a small town, so like that. So this is a physical place that can hold, that hosts a parking lot. This is a setup we've built a few months ago for the Maker Faire in Rome. So this is why you see it there. This is a parking lot. You see just one. This is a floor. If you have a big place, you can have multiple floors. So, but this is just one because it was what we used for the demo. Okay, this is the parking lot view. What you can see here is a number of sensors. This is interesting because this sensor, you can add a new sensor using the manage field. You can add a new sensor, and when you add a sensor here, this sensor is added to the application itself. So the application knows a new sensor, but using the Arduino IoT API, you can create all the thing and the property and the baking stuff that need to be created to communicate with the devices. You just using just APIs. This is what already there. So since the lockdown, since I don't have a LoRa gateway at home, I don't have those little tiny boxes, so I have to simulate this thing. So if you remember my diagram before, you have the application. This is the application, the custom application we have built using just what the public API offers. And this is the API thing. So when I add a sensor here, the API creates a sensor here. So if I open this is our cloud. So each thing, it's a virtual representation of a device. Usually a device have one or more properties. A property usually can represent a temperature sensor, a light sensor, and so on. In this case, we have created an availability property that represents the parking spot is available or not. So I don't have a device. So if a device detect a car, communicate with the cloud, and this property becomes on. So I don't have a device, so I use my own finger and I click here. This, oops, sorry. I have some bad lag on my mouse pointer. I don't know why, probably.
Your machine is a bit overloaded by the screen sharing.
Yes,
Okay.
I think so. Let me see. I need to, okay, because I need to go to this view because the live update only applies here. You can see the sensor 2 is turned green. If I go here and I put it off, it should be turned red.
Boom. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, as I said, it's a classic web app with a Python background. I mean, backend. Also, you're using serverless, which is even more modern as a setup. But I guess right now there are like tons of use cases where you essentially have maps of places with placeholders. This could be, for example, a hand sanitizer dispenser, and somebody could use this to detect if there is or not the hand sanitizer, and you can place it in a building. So it's a paradigm that you could use for like a ton of different geographical applications. So I think it's very interesting. Actually, one of the things that I wanted to mention in one of the many banners that we have. So if somebody wanted to build something like a demo of something similar, they can use the Arduino IoT Cloud. And just to clarify, the Arduino IoT Cloud has a free tier. So this means that you can work at least with one device for free. But if you want to do more, you can use this code.
For free.
Create for free. If you go to create.arduino.cc and you go for the IoT Cloud, you can use this code to get essentially a free upgrade to the maker plan, we call it, which gives you access to more devices. You can program ESP8266 devices with this, which you cannot do in the free version. And then you can have access to the APIs. And I would say, to me, as an external user, the API look very straightforward to use because, I don't know, the team, in my opinion, did a nice work. Yes, exactly. This is exactly. So you get this example. So you have JavaScript, Python, and Go.
Yeah, you can use the SDK. If you're using one of these languages, you can start using one of our SDK. But if you are using other languages, you can generate your own or just write your own using the HTTP endpoint. So it's very straightforward. It's available. This is our official. Okay, this documentation is generated, but there are some example here. We are using this for our work, so I can. It's a dog fooding. Massimo was mentioning before. So I invite you to take a look at this if you have something, and please get in touch with me if you have some if you want to know more, or if you have some interesting project. So you can find my Twitter handle in everywhere in my presentation. So please get in touch if you want to know more.
Wow. Thank you very much for this. This is great. We'll ask you to wait until the end so that we can bring you back to say hi to everybody. If there are other questions, please, people put them in the chat and we'll address them later. Let's remove for a second the discount code for the cloud. So thank you very much, Maurizio, for taking part. I think
thank you for having me.
It's also good for people that use Arduino to see the face of the people who build the things that they are using. So I think it's very important. So we will send you back to the green room and we'll bring you back for the final goodbyes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to dig into that this summer. I'm excited to have some time.
Yeah, now that you have free time, you can... do you have, we sent you the new hardware so you can play around. Yeah, we'll have to make sure that we send some new hardware to Elizabeth as well so that she can play with the latest stuff. Okay, let's bring in the next guest. Before we do that, just a reminder quickly that the discount code for this episode is new-york. Boom, over there. Good job. And yeah, so if you use the discount code, you can get a discount on the online store. It's a small discount. We're just basically offering you a beer. You can get a beer on us. And talking about pints and pups, I did have a few pints with the next guest in the past. So there you go. Oh, he's having a pint right now.
Hey,
welcome to John Nussey.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, it's a big pleasure. And I realized that I met both you and Benedetta the same year. So that was
but we never crossed paths, so
I know.
It was such an important year in my life, I guess.
Yeah. It was like 2007.
2007, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a bit of it. I found some good old pictures. So I've
do you want to share the presentation while you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share this. There we go. That should be with you.
Boom! Look at that.
There's a typical shot of me in some kind of workshop. Look at this yeah, so my name's John Nussey. I'm a designer, technologist, entrepreneur, now based in lovely Folkestone down on the south coast of the UK. No one will know where that is, I reckon, but worth checking out. Cool, I'll go through the presentation. So I'll probably say we a lot because I talk about the business I have with my wife, Avril. So we have a company called On Studio. Just to give you a brief summary of the kind of thing. So I think, yeah, when I first met Massimo, I was still sort of figuring out what I was doing. I was working at a design consultancy. Since then, we've gone through forming a company, looking at product prototyping, R&D, proof of concepts, working with entrepreneurs, making temporary projects for exhibits or making lifetime products like consumer electronics. And we've gone through loads of different projects. No two are the same. But I'll give you a taste of a couple of them as well. So I found this while I was looking through photos.
Oh, wow.
I love
it. Workshop that we were talking about earlier, a toy hacking workshop in
I
London.
have hair in the...
So that's you and Alexandra Deschamps and Sino next to you, and Adam Somlai Fisher. Adam's gone on to found Prezi, zooming presentation giant that he is. And that was just I thought I'd put that in because that was really I guess a tipping point for me. Like I hadn't heard about Arduino before then. I hadn't even thought about electronics for years, probably since secondary school. So I think Adam showed up with a wheelie suitcase filled with really sort of dodgy Chinese toys that he'd found in a market in Budapest. Yeah. And they're the kind of horror story ones where you take the fur off and it's bits of bent metal underneath. So yeah, we took those apart and we had to hack them for the weekend. And the great thing was that because they were so cheap, all the components are really big, easy to identify, and you could just short circuit things. You could make I think we had a robot dog that would sing a song, and if you changed the resistor, then you could make its voice change. So you had these horrific toys at the end of it, sort of singing haunting songs all the way through. But yeah, that was really my first step into it, and then after that, I went to a lot of other Arduino workshops trying to control it a bit more. This was more hacky, then it went a bit more controlled with Arduino, I'd say. But then, because we've only got so much time, skipping ahead a little bit. So first slide was 2007. Then in 2013, I was asked to write Arduino for Dummies. So I'd gone through lots of workshops, learning along the way. I've been really lucky to have a lot of influential people who were experimenting with this stuff at the time. And I think I had a practical take on it because I'm a designer by education. I didn't study electronics, electrical engineering, anything like that. And I quite like the practical side that I could build things. And for me, the coding was the harder bit of it, I'd say. And a lot of software developers I'd been learning with, they were perfectly comfortable on the coding side, but the electronics really baffled them. And I felt, because I was a bit more practical, I got to grips with the building circuits side of it a lot quicker. But yeah, that was just a great chance to put some of my feelings into a book, like how I'd approach it as a designer, as a novice to Arduino. Just sort of summed up years of teaching. I thought I'd pick a couple of projects. So this one's more R&D related. We called it Oyster cards for hens. And this is in a farm in Oxford. So we're sat there with my wellies and my laptop and this experimental hen coop. And this was all about looking at the laying habits of hens. So it's for the FAI, Farming Agricultural Institute. And they had no way to look at the genetics of a flock of hens. They'd look at them as a group rather than individual ones. And you can do things by examining shell quality to understand if they're lacking nutrients or they're the runt of the litter, all these other things you can find out. And Avril illustrated it really nicely. This was the approach we took, which was to have, so an Oyster card in the UK is like a Metro card, contactless payment card. Most people will probably be familiar with that these days. But back then, I think it was still quite a novel thing. So the hen would walk in, it would have a tag on its ankle, there'd be a big reader inside the coop, and then it says Arduino and electronics. So I've done this right down, so there's no chance for nerd alert on this run. But so we use this high frequency RFID reader to detect the chicken's tag. And then, thanks for that.
Sorry about that, I had to do it.
all the different pop-ups. So, and then the idea of this was you'd have a sensor at the back, like a distance sensor, that would detect an egg rolling past. In reality, it was a lot harder to get a hen's egg to roll where you wanted it to. So, so we more or less gave up on that side of it and focused on the occupancy side, so we'd know which hens are in the coop. And we went from it depends how big this is on your screen, but we went from a dev board, which is on the top left-hand side, with a Mega, Arduino Mega, through to a custom shield that we made on the bottom left, which has this ultra-high frequency RFID module that you can plug into a commercial antenna. So we really simplified it down. Will Damerel helped us on the RFID side of things, calculating everything we needed. And also on the top right, there's a tag that we made for the hens. So we use these standard sticker tags that you can buy. You get them in different shapes and sizes. We made one to fit the tag that worked the best for us. And we made it out of this silicon sort of rubber that you could 3D print. So we actually made a really well-fitting improvement on the traditional tags used on hens. So the traditional ones they're made out of a tough plastic, and they can sometimes pinch the leg of a hen and startle it. And these are really comfort fit, really. So it's a side project that came out of it, like a nicer kind of tag for the hens. So the next one, on the other end of the spectrum, more consumer product side of things. So for the last, I'd say 4.5 years, we took a side project of ours, which was to redesign the doorbell, and had it as our own startup venture. We developed it from a concept. We did fundraising, we did a Kickstarter, we did crowdfunding, just to see the full process. So I think previous to that, we'd had a lot of clients who were startup entrepreneurs, and we'd maybe seen them for the first leg of the journey. Sometimes they'd run out of money or time or like effort on any of it, and you never get those ideas into the real world. So we sort of felt like we've got a good idea here. We could make a stab of it. This is the final product that came out of it: an audio smart doorbell. So you press the button, rings on your phone using Wi-Fi calling, and you can answer it anywhere in the world. And it has a chime. The fabric covered half of it is a chime that sits inside your house. As we're talking about Arduino, I didn't want to get too much into that whole side of the business, but this was actually one of the early prototypes. So it was I think Arduino Micro and a phoner shield. So you can make a mobile phone with those things quite easily. And I think for a pitch event we did really early on, before we had any funding for it or anything, I think we threw this together in a day, and it sent a text message when you pressed the button, said someone's at your door. And from a usability point of view, I mean, that's totally unscalable as a technology, but from a usability point of view, nobody knows the difference, and it gets your idea into the hands of people, and they can get the experience of a smart doorbell, even if it's charging you several pence a text message or something like that. And yeah, there are a few versions of it. Then we went all the way through to being on Amazon Prime and selling our products. This is in the factory stage of it. So we did batch production, maybe made a few thousand units with a really good company in Sussex called Interface Manufacturing. So we managed to make the boards in the UK as well. Really quick turnaround time, lots of control over the circuit design and revisions as well. And yeah, there's some shots of us just on the factory floor. In the end, we went with an ESP32, which was like the brains of our both our products, so the doorbell button and the chime inside the house as well. And yeah, it was really good. It was an exercise in simplifying things. So we tried to cram as much as we could in. We could do fully encrypted voice calls on this one tiny module. And yeah, I think at the end of it, there's always things, when you've made something, there's always things you look at and you think, oh, I could have done that better, or I'd change that. But I think at the end of the day, we made a really solid product on a real budget. I think we're quite thrifty as a startup. And yeah, we sort of, did all the packaging and branding around it and tried to get across the simplicity side of it. Unfortunately, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that, we just didn't have enough money to carry on doing it. We were up against Amazon and Google. They were our main competitors, so it's hardly surprising on that side.
Challenging.
Yeah. But we got it to a really good stage. We've sold it on to another entrepreneur who's going to make a stab of it, hopefully, and keep it going. But we really reached a point where we couldn't get much further, and it also taught us a bit about what part of the process we're best at and we prefer, which is more the product development side. A lot of the fundraising, I'm sure Alfred won't mind me saying this either, wasn't enjoyable for us at all. I'm sure lots of people feel the same in that respect. But yeah, I think we've learned so much by going through the whole process, and we did it in quite a safe way so that we could walk away from it at the end of the day, reflect on it, and go back to our consultancy business with a different sort of lens on things. So we're working with other startups and companies, understanding the stresses they face as the client. So we've been on the client side and the service side now. Yeah. And I think you just need to, at some point, you need to do that just to understand the pressures they're under as well. Yeah, and that's a very quick run through. There's more on the website as well, if anyone's interested.
Yeah. Lovely projects. And also, one of the interesting things I think about this doorbell project is that sometimes you end up working with designers that don't really have an experience of what it means to actually build a device till the end, especially on IoT devices, which means firmware, hardware, physical objects, cloud, and everything else. So at least, this project that you build, it's a clear indication that you know how to start from a piece of paper and go into manufacturing. Yeah. So I hope this is going to help you get a lot of clients because it's a very, very nicely executed project, and it's real. It's not one of those fake, rendering that sometimes people have on.
Yeah. I think that's it as well. It's like also I'm sure some of the old team will be on the YouTube chat as well. But one of the things we found is we had a really good core team for the project, and that really got us much further than maybe many more rounds of fundraising and spending lots on outsourcing it. I think having the foundations there really gets you a lot further. So Simon, who is our CTO, ended up writing all the firmware for the devices, despite the fact like he probably would have wanted to have been helping someone else write it. But because he was so involved in it, I think we got exactly what we wanted out of it. And it was, like I was saying, trying to work with a limited bit of hardware was another challenge that he sort of rose to, and yeah, it was just a really neat product. I think no sort of extra sensors for no reason or anything like that. It was a real sort of exercise in minimalism on the whole thing.
Let me just zoom in a little bit so that people can see you better. Yeah, so also I realized that in the project that you showed before, the one about the Oyster card, you also end up making your own hardware there as well, no?
Yeah, and that's often where it gets to. So it's like, even if it's R&D proof of concept, we tend to spend a short amount of time trying stuff out with breadboards and the like, and then very quickly, once we can make a board to sit on another, it just makes it much easier to work with. And a lot of the time, once you've solved the electronics for that round, you just need to get it used and out in the world. So it's a very achievable thing to do as well. There's lots of companies out there now that I'd say it's interesting. If you're doing it for your own knowledge and benefit, you can definitely do it yourself. There's the software there to do it. But when you get to the next level, you can find partners who are happy to work with you to do it. Even on our RFID stuff, Will, who worked with us, he was keen to make the board to make it more available to other people as well. So yeah, it's good on both sides, whether you're doing it for education or you're doing it as an actual sort of business, or bit of kit to make.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So I guess it was interesting. It was interesting that you were involved so early with Arduino, so you saw the evolution when it was kind of rough around the edges.
Yeah. I was going to ask you on that side as well, Massimo, because so we were quite lucky in some ways that when we were doing the Doorbell project, the ESP32 had just come out, more or less. So maybe just been out a few months, and that was a really good bit of kit for a good price. And I think we'd gone between various, say, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone, all these things that are off the shelf, which are very early stage prototyping tools. And there was a massive divide between that and something production ready. And I was more wondering on Arduino, is there any plan to get into the same space as ESP32? With that, they've done a great job, obviously reducing their prices somehow. But any plans on that side? Well,
so we do now make a number of products that are designed to be sort of ingredients in other people. So there's like a new family of nano products that are designed, they're castellated, so you can SMD mount them on somebody else's product. And effectively, we have been selling quite a few of them. And we even sold like a few thousand of them to somebody who was building a bunch of ventilators in the UK. Some spin-off of a very big UK English university. So they bought a bunch of them as a sort of the ingredient for their product. Because I guess one of the main issues that I've seen is that the ESP32 clearly is a big revolution. It brought down the price of all these Wi-Fi devices. And so we have to recognize the work that the company did. The founder is a great guy, so nice company. One of the issues that you have when you go into production is that a lot of products that are based on ESP32, they use random firmware, which cannot be certified. So one of the issues that people sometimes face is that either they spend a ton of money to certify kind of the firmware on that, or they go for something like what we do, which is more integrated. So you drop it in, and it's certified. And so depending on how much money you have to invest in the product, so the ESP is great for building things for yourself, but when you go into production, then you have to consider that you have to certify all the firmwares, and everything that's wireless is complicated. It's very expensive. So that's why, for example, we use the ESP32 in one of our products, the Maker 1010 and the Nano IoT. They use a module that uses the ESP32 for the Wi-Fi interface, but we buy it from a Swiss company called uBlocks, which is super certified, So it's kind of So yeah, that's kind of the gist of what we're trying to do. Provide modules that are also certified, because if you're trying to build a real product, either you invest a ton of money for certification or you buy something that's a bit more.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Cool. So unfortunately, we kind of ran out of time, because all of the things that you guys have been saying are super interesting. So sometimes I wish the show was a couple of hours longer, but we realized that people don't. They 1 hour is a good number for people. So let me bring back all the other guests so that we can. Other guests, are you ready? Can I bring you in? Yes. Boom. Well, so this was a great episode. All the things that you've been telling us have been great.
Super cool.
And also, I still can't get over this Oyster card for chicken. That somebody even said they love the diagram with the chicken. But apart from that, it's nice to see this diversity of project. Something that kind of it's citizen science and art, and then something that's like industrial design, but IoT taken to the actual production, and also people who design the APIs that we use to build things. So it's kind of interesting to see all the different aspects of technology. And so we thank you very much for being here. Benedetta, you have some last word. Are you overwhelmed by the...
No, it's awesome. They span all the different realms. So I think it's really cool to see, all the different applications and all the different species involved in these projects.
Maybe we can make an Oyster card for microbes.
Yeah. I love the attachment. The designer, John, the designer in you had to make a really nice, perfectly fitting, attachment for a hand. That's awesome. I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm trying to look one last time for the thing with the code on it. Maybe, okay, good. Thank you, Katarina, sitting in the back. All right, so this is the time where the guests get to say hi to the world. So starting with Elizabeth.
Hi. I don't know. Hi, Mom and Dad, if you're watching.
Okay. Maurizio, it's your turn. Maurizio is frozen. Okay. Wiley defrost himself.
Yes. Okay. Maybe I'm back.
He's back.
You're back. You're back. You can say goodbye to the audience.
Okay. Oh, I missed the invitation. So thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. So I thought I usually say hi to the family, but this time I bring the family with me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's a branded family. Oh, wow. So hi, family, and
ciao, family. Nice. They're also different colors. Very good job. Very nice. John, is your turn to say hi to everyone.
Yeah, hi to everyone, friends and family. Hopefully my parents managed to get the link to work, but we'll find out later.
Very, very nice. So thank you very much to all of you. And I guess oh yes, I don't have a drink with me, but I can use this. This is Waldmeyer's lamp. I'll pretend it's a flute or something.
Cheers.
And then, cheers. Thank you. Cheers and thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
End the broadcast.